Shalom, welcome to 6 by 6. 6 minutes a day, 6 days a week, and you get a whole idea from Likutei Sichos, which is a talk from the Rebbe and enlightens our eyes when he teaches us. And just really a real fast, brief idea, which we were talking about with 2,000 years of exile, and it was very harsh, of course. We're still in exile, but nowadays, the last 100 years, we have the previous Rebbe released from exile, teaching us Chassidus, spreading out Torah and the inner ideas of Torah throughout the world, through the Chabad houses, throughout the entire world, affecting the non-Jews also. But that we could see also illuminated by the previous Rebbe also, that he was went through terrible tortures. We talked about that a few days ago. And so it's in any case, it's an interesting idea that the tzaddikim and righteous people, many times, if you go through the Chumash, you go through the prophets, that they went and you say, oh, well, if they're righteous, they must have the best life in the world. Well, they probably, if you look at it, had probably the harshest times in the world. Abraham was thrown into a burning fire. Jacob had his son being kidnapped from him. Hannah didn't have any children for a long time. That David was constantly being run after from the King Saul, his father-in-law, on and on. He had many wars. So again, just doesn't equate. They say, well, if you have a harsh life, it must be that God hates you. No, on the contrary, it could be very much the opposite. And that's what we're saying with the previous Rebbe also, that even though they had harsh lives, that they gave themselves over, you say it in Hebrew, Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice for the sake of the Jewish people. And that's what happened to him. He was tortured. We talked about it. It's really a whole story in its own right. Terrible story, but he was tortured. I mean, torture a holy man like this, a beautiful person, and a Rebbe. Nevertheless, that he was tortured. He was crippled for life. He kept going afterwards for over 20 more years in this lifetime, and he's with us spiritually, but still physically he had another 20 years, and it was very harsh conditions that he went through, literally torture. You can only imagine. I mean, that they talk about it. That he was tortured and physically and mentally, but he still kept his head above water, so to speak, because he is the Rebbe. He was very strong about it. And he, not only that, he says, all right, I survived, but like I say, he thrived. That right after, not even right after, right when he was in exile, as we said, for 3 years, he says, well, I'm here to spread out Judaism. Well, why are you saying that? That's the crime, quote unquote, that you were put into jail. You almost had a death sentence put upon your head. So why you keep on going like that? But he still kept on going, not only like before, but even more than before. We see how much Judaism has sprung out and has spread out since the times of that 1927 times. Surely, it was in Russia, for example, where he was. We see there's so many Jewish kids in camp today, and there's so many because of the seeds that the previous Rebbe planted when he was there in Russia. We see in America, Judaism was dead. No one wants religion in the 1920s. And now that Judaism's totally on the growth, Torah Judaism schools are bursting at the seams, growing and growing and growing. Chabad houses where every little niche, these little cities that I've never heard of, that they have Chabad houses. Wherever there's a Jew, they're being affected by the Chabad houses. So on the contrary, what do we see? We see that the exile, or surely from the previous Rebbe, that made us grow. So too, that's the idea behind the exile in a bigger sense. We said a more inner sense. What does it mean? It's just saying after 2,000 years of exile, not only, okay, let's go back home to Israel and let's have a temple and everything will go back to what was before. No, it's not enough. It's going to be bigger and better than it ever was before. We're going to have the third temple. There will never be another exile again. Again, exactly how to picture it, that the Rambam says and the Jewish commentary says we can't really see and understand what it will ultimately happen. I mean, we could say there's going to be peace and prosperity, and which is pretty big news, especially nowadays. Hardly any peace going on throughout the world. A lot of countries fighting, but there will be peace and prosperity for everybody, and that is something very, very special. We'll not only again go back to what we were, we're going to be better than we ever were before. And we'll conclude with a beautiful lesson for us today in the last session. Thank you very much.